Hey, good morning from Vietnam, Melissa. How are you today?
I'm good, and kia ora from Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Melissa, today is a holiday in our country, and in the celebration of holiday, we're so grateful for having you to the show and sharing your story with us. So thank you very much for doing that.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Wonderful. Melissa, it would be huge appreciated if you can share to me and the audience about who you are and what you've been doing. Can you do that for us, please?
Absolutely. So, right now, I am starting a new thing. So, I'm in total creative pre launch phase, which is a business called the Great Work Lab,
Mm,
because I really believe that people want to turn up to work doing a great job,
mm,
and organizations and companies want people to do a great job because, of
mm,
course, that makes people perform better and you have a better outcome for everyone.
mm,
And what I've found in my 20 plus years in human resources, often we don't set up organizations or we don't have leaders that are creating the right environment for that to happen.
mm,
So I believe really passionately around how do we create environments within work where people can do great work, where they can, be the best they can be.
mm,
And my career has been, as I said before, 20 years in HR. I've just returned to New Zealand after 4 years in Amsterdam in a
mm,
global role with Heineken. So I've had a lot of experience both internationally as well in New Zealand around all areas of HR. And it's an area I'm really passionate about. And, for me, it's around how do we create these workplaces and how do we create leaders that are actually enabling their people to be their best, because I know I feel better when I get to turn up to work and do a great job,
mm,
and when I'm able to operate in my strengths and bring my gifts and my whole self. And I think it's so sad that so many people feel they've got to almost pack away the best parts of themselves when they turn up to work to just do something that's not really who they are or what brings them alive. And I
mm,
think if we can, really enable people to be their best self and to do great work, that would be fantastic. So
mm,
that's why my new company is called the Great Work Lab, and it's got three key areas in it. One is around growth mindset, because I'm hugely impacted by Dr. Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. If people haven't read the book Mindset, you should buy it.
That's the
It's
one
from
behind you right there.
it is, yep,
I
it
think
is. It's
I have one, but
it's
not in this library. I have one in a different room. We also have the mindset for Dr. Carol also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, look, it's fantastic. And I think coming across her work probably about 15 years ago, it changed me. It
Mm,
changed who I was and what I thought was possible for myself. It changed how I parent my kids. It changed how I showed up as a leader in work. And I'm really interested in how we bring growth mindset more and more into the workplace,
mm,
because it's been in schools and education now for a good decade or so, and it's quite, there's a lot of resources for parents and teachers around what that means for kids,
mm,
but there isn't a lot around what does this mean for adults and organisations and workplaces, and how can organisations be set up to be a growth mindset with things like performance management systems, how we
mm,
lead people, how
mm,
teams are set up, are all enabling that. And Microsoft is very much the poster child for growth mindset, because they've changed their whole culture
mm,
with their CEO Satya Nadella. He came across Carol Dweck's work,
mm,
and they've done this massive culture change from what they called know it all to learn it alls,
mm,
and all grounded in growth mindset. So I'm really interested in how do we take that really practically and help organizations bring it to life.
mm,
How do we, how as leaders in organizations, how do you create growth mindset teams? Because we know teams that are operating with a growth mindset are more innovative, they're more resilient, they
mm,
keep going when times are hard, their performance is higher, they see things like failure and mistakes as being a natural part of learning and
mm,
what we have to do. And there's that psychological safety to ensure people feel, really safe and comfortable in saying, hey, how about this? And throwing out new ideas and new ways of doing things. And, to be truly innovative or creative, there's always a risk that it might not work. Because and if there's no risk, then we're not being creative and innovative because we're just being safe and staying in our comfort zone. So growth mindset is one big key part of my new business and the body of work that I want to create, because I'm just so passionate about it. The second part is around design thinking, and I came across design thinking methodology probably about 4 years ago, and I've gone through training with INSEAD, and I've done a lot of work in Heineken around that as well too. And for me, that kind of brought everything together. It's around how do we then design the experiences that employees have at work that is based on their experience and based on a good experience. And going back to what I was saying before, how do we create environments where people can thrive and be their best self? So how do we design that? How do we do a performance management system that people want to do instead of everyone moaning and groaning and not knowing what they want to put in their personal development plan or whatever, because it's too much paperwork or it's clunky or it's just, not designed well. So design thinking I find really exciting, and I love the fact you prototype lots of ideas so you fail fast. So you're not spending all your time and invested on one idea before you even know if it's going to work. It's like quick prototypes, testing, and then expecting a chunk of them to fail. And that's really good. And also I think that goes nicely with the growth mindset as well. And then the third pillar on the work I do is really around coaching senior leaders, because I've come from, senior leaders role in a very large multinational. I understand those challenges around, what it means to be a senior leader, and, things like imposter syndrome, things like, self-doubt, things like, that is actually, we often think very senior leaders have none of that. But that's not true at all. All of us are a work in progress. And I think we will be a work in progress until we die, because that's what being human is all about. And just because someone's in a very senior role does not mean they know it all or that they're fully cooked. We'll never be fully cooked. I hope in 5 years' time I'm a much better version of Melissa than I am right now, because I want to keep on developing and doing what I need to do to make myself a better version of myself. So for me, I really enjoy working with senior leaders, particularly people that are willing to get vulnerable and go deep and really look at, what does that mean for them? And particularly around what does it mean to be a growth mindset leader? How do they bring that into themselves, but also within their teams or functions that they work with? So that's what I do. And
Exciting.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, exciting. I love the works that you do, and I really admire that, because uh, growth mindset is something I also embody in, and and I also believe that that is fundamental for our growth, and with having the right kind of mindset, especially the growth mindset, then we constantly on the learning, on the growing,
Yeah.
and that is the backbone of what we do. And I'm really excited about design thinking also, because that philosophy of design thinking has been in the market for long, but the application for that is still in the early age for many companies,
Absolutely.
and the combination of design thinking, the growth mindset, and the coaching also, we have to put in the an ecosystem that help leaders, that help individuals to teams to grow, and to the next level. So great, Joyce, wonderful. Congratulations on coming up with that business idea. All right, Melissa.
Thank you. And I do think, design thinking, particularly for HR people, is a critical capability. And I think often people think design thinking is just for, products or, a new, I don't know, chair or a computer software, but it's not. And if we actually think about, like, right now, everyone's calling it it's moved from the talent war to the great resignation. We know there's a lot of people thinking about making changes in their work. COVID has made everyone reflect. People are going to make choices about where they work based on the experience they get there. And if that experience is not, a good experience and in line with their values and about enabling them to be their best, people won't stay. And people have choices. And, really great people, that are doing great jobs, they have many, many, many choices. So I think organisations have to really not sit back and think, oh, everyone should want to work for us. Instead, be thinking, how are we creating the employee experience, creating an environment that people want to come to, they feel a sense of purpose working here and want to be able to do their best. And I think, this is what's driven me my whole career in HR. It is around, because often people think there's an old school view about HR that's about hiring people, firing people, that type of stuff and paperwork. And that's not what HR is about, actually. Our purpose is around how do we create an incredible environment that people want to come? How do we ensure our culture is in line with our values? How do we ensure our leaders are operating in the right behaviours and have the skills and knowledge to be really great leaders? That is the purpose. And, that's why I've stayed in HR. Even, it's a hard job often, particularly in COVID. I think, HR people have been really working hard in the last few years because often as HR people, we feel like we have to take care of everyone else. And, that's been very much, I think when you look at, there's a lot of burnt out HR people around the world at the moment because they've been so focused on caring for everyone. But people that tend to go into HR, I think we go in because we feel deeply that we can make a difference with people, particularly within the workplace.
That's what we're gonna go and do after see now. All right, Melissa, I would like to bring you back to your university time because I saw that you study about history and feminist, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, but then when you graduated and then you chose to work in the human resource space. So what happened back then?
Yeah, look, when I was at university, I just did subjects I was interested in, and I'm a really curious person. I love to read, I read really widely, and I like lots of different topics. So I did end up with this double major in history and feminist studies. I also, probably almost had enough points for religious studies, for anthropology, for philosophy. There's a whole lot of subjects. I had more points than I needed to even graduate just because it was really interesting subjects. And I actually thought I might stay at university. Originally, I thought I might end up being a feminist historian and write books and teach at university. But I also was working part-time at that stage in a company called The Warehouse in New Zealand. And that's a big retailer. So it's like the New Zealand version of Walmart. So it's the biggest retailer in New Zealand, thousands of employees. And I'd work part-time while I was at university because I needed to. I needed to support myself. So I worked school holidays, weekends, or university holidays, weekends, or the like. And they had a trainee manager program. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to give that a shot. If I get in, I will go to work because I was also really tired of being broke and not having much money. So I thought it'd be quite nice to earn some money. And then if I don't get it, I will stay and keep doing and, work towards getting a PhD and stay within the academic route. And I got into the job and I loved it. And this was more a trainee manager. So I was doing a bit of everything and learning every part. And I had such a great time. And it was a year into that program that an HR job got advertised internally. And I had no idea what HR people did. I just thought, oh, I like people and I've enjoyed some of the training and stuff that I did. So I thought, why not? And I applied for it without really knowing what I was applying for. And to my surprise, I got the job. And then 3 weeks later, I had to move from Christchurch, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, up into Auckland, which is, in the North Island, and start this new job. And I remember I had 5 days in Auckland before I started. And I remember sitting in this motel thinking, I don't know what HR people do, and just being absolutely terrified. Um, but look, it was an incredible start to my HR career because it was more a mid-level advisor role, and we did a lot. I got to take on a whole lot of really challenging work really quickly, and it was an amazing introduction. So I really fell into it without really knowing what I was doing, but I think I trusted my instinct at the time, and I went for something and I think that's why too, I often find people don't apply for jobs and all of that if they think they don't have all of the tick the boxes, in the job description. I have never met the job description requirements for any of my HR jobs because I don't have an HR degree, which is in all of those job descriptions. But I'm such a keen learner, and I love learning. So for me, it was just an exciting time to then start learning myself. And because I like to be practical as well, how do you take that theory and bring it to life? So that served me quite well to the point that I got invited to go to, Amsterdam and work there for 4 years as well too in a global role. So, I really did fall into HR, but it was a good place to fall into, and it really, it's where I feel I can live my purpose.
Melissa, one of the things that we would always aiming to promote for the people is to find the work that they love to do, because our
Yeah.
works means a lot in our life, and if we have a work that we love to do, then we will have a happier life, and happier life will create happier family, happier community, and things like that. So we would want to ask you, you've been in this space for 20 plus years, and what's so good about HR that made Melissa decided to stay and grow in this space?
For me, what really drives me is seeing people grow and see possibilities. And one thing you get to do in HR is you get to work with people, and you get the privilege for people to be really open and vulnerable, and be able to help guide and mentor and give advice around how they can develop, how they can grow. So that part really fulfills me because I love seeing, someone, and like there's some people that I've watched their career start from their first HR job and now see where they've got to, and it's so wonderful to see that. I often say for people that have been in my teams in the past, it's like, you'll always be part of my team. It doesn't matter if we work different organizations now, because I really care and I love seeing people grow and develop. So, for me, it's not just when you've got your own team, it's that wider impact. It's around how do you enable that across an organization? How can you have impact? How can you be the voice at the table about the people side of things? Because a business is not just the factories or the machines or anything like that. You can have two identical physical properties with identical machinery, but if you have great leadership and engaged people in one of those buildings and poor leadership and disengaged people in the other, you will have a hugely different level of performance. And that's always really interested me as well too, because it's not just coming to work to, feel good. I like outcomes, and I'm quite outcome driven, and I like seeing how, if we work on some of the people aspects, how that can have a flow on impact on the performance of the organization as well too. And I do, I like, for me, I think so much of my personal purpose is brought to life through the work I do. And I think as human beings, we are purpose-driven individuals. We're looking for purpose. We want to contribute. We want to feel we're part of something bigger than just ourselves. I think that's hardwired into us. We want to be part of communities. And because we spend, as you said, because we spend so much time at work, that time at work when we're awake, for most of the days of a week is where we are. If we can actually feel that we belong, that we're contributing, that we're having a purpose, that's only a good thing for everyone. And HR gets to impact that. HR gets to help an organisation figure out its purpose. HR can help people link their own internal purpose to that company purpose. HR can guide, what are the values, what are the behaviours, what is this culture? It's almost like the conscience of an organisation as well too. So I think it's a really privileged role to be in. Wow. And don't get me wrong, there's really hard times in HR. You've also got to do some really tough stuff. There can be restructuring, there can be disciplinaries, there can be dismissals. There's all of that kind of employment relations side. HR is not just all, fun, happy stuff. But that part for me was always, okay, well, how do we do this in the most fairest way possible? How do we ensure we're incredibly respectful for everybody when we do that? Because also too, fairness is a really important value of mine. And if we've got someone who isn't performing or who isn't, or maybe, theft or something like that, if it's not fair to everyone else, if that is not addressed.
Wow.
So, that's very much how has guided my thinking as well. But very much, fairness, respect, and how do we do things in a really just way. So even if there's difficult stuff that have to happen, people feel heard, they're part of a process, and they have all the, the legal rights that they should have to, in those cases that need to happen.
Wow, wonderful! Thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa. For those of our audience who are HR lover or who love to get into the HR space, please listen to her advice. Melissa, but we have people in HR for 20 years or so, but then the careers are different, and then you're in the HR for 20 years, but then the growth and is phenomenon. Can you tell us the secret sauce that contributes to your success in the industry in HR function though?
When I reflect on my career, I spent my 20s trying to, wear the business suit and look a certain way and be what I thought, a successful professional looked like. And that only gets you so far, because that's not being authentic or showing up as your whole self. And I'm also an artist. I'm also really creative. I'm also, really curious, and I read science fiction, all these other things. And I used to keep those very separate to my work self. But it was when I was in my 30s, I thought, no, that is not who I want to be. I want to bring my whole self. And I want to bring my creativity, my different way of looking at the world into the work I do. So for me, that's why I think I've had a successful career, because once I started doing that, I started doing things in a different way, in the Melissa way. And because particularly that growth mindset, I think when I came across Carol Dweck's work, that was probably a really key trigger for me to do so, where I thought, I'm going to show up in these jobs as me. I'm going to, be authentic. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to also be open when I don't know stuff. Whereas when in my 20s, I used to feel like I had to have all the answers. That if someone asked me something, I needed to say, you need to do this, this, and this. Where it was when I, got a bit older and had this growth mindset, just being really open around when I didn't know, but let's figure it out together. And I think that also helps people trust you a lot more as well. So I think being vulnerable and open around, all the areas, I'm such a work in progress. The growth mindset stuff, I've been working up with it for so long, and I still catch myself with a fixed mindset thought or something in different areas. And I think I will for the rest of my life. I think it's just an ongoing thing. But the other thing is bringing all of those parts. You know, I'm not into normal PowerPoint slides with lots of bullet points. They bore me. I don't find them interesting. If I'm doing a training session, it'll have pictures. You know, it won't have any of the lots of text and lots of bullet. I don't do it that way. I
Mm.
like doing improv exercises because I think that makes people think different. I like, making people experience things rather than just being told things.
Mm.
So I bring all of those elements of parts of me that are not in the HR job description.
Mm.
And I think that, like design thinking, I was curious myself. I decided to learn,
Mm.
and then I just did it. I ran a workshop
Mm.
and a great outcome, and then created a great product based on this. And then I started getting invited to do more and more workshops in different parts, nothing to do with my job, but in different parts of the business. Because, and then I got asked to do a training session on design thinking at a global conference, and all of that, and nothing to do with being in my job description. So that would be another thing I would say to people.
Mm.
Don't ever feel limited by job descriptions.
Mm.
And, both at the start when you decide to apply or not, based on whether you tick the boxes, because, as I said, I've never ticked all the boxes,
Mm.
and that's perfectly fine. But also, how you contribute. Yes, there's always that part you need to do, but then look at what else. What are your things that you're curious about, that you like, that you can bring? That's uniquely you, that you can
Mm.
bring to what you do.
Wow.
So, I don't try and be a standard HR person. I try and be Melissa, coming in to contribute the best I can
Mm.
within what happens to be an HR role, but I'd never
Mm.
feel limited by the role itself.
I think the best way, and that's the best that we could be, because being authentic and be who we are, coming to work without the cosmetic on our personalities, showing our real personality to work, and then that make works a lot more easier, and then to take it on, and also to express the way we work with people also and deliver the result. So thanks so much, Melissa, for sharing that. I want to bring you all the way back to when you was a little kid also. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So when you were a young girl and dreaming that one day you're gonna become, what did you dream back then?
I thought I was going to be either a school teacher or a vet. So,
What is the second?
a vet working with animals.
So school teacher and the age are quite similar in one way or another, right?
I think so. And I
Yeah.
think, one thing I love to do is teach and facilitate. And that's one thing I've always been able to do within HR, whether
Mm,
it's training people or, I love doing that. So,
mm,
and even when I think, university, when I thought might go into, be a university professor, that would have been about teaching as well. So
mm,
I think that is a common thread.
mm.
And and as a kid too, I used to line up all my dolls and teddy bears, and I used to run school classes for them, and I'd take them to the library, which was my bookshelf in my bedroom, and I'd take out books and all of that sort of stuff. That was what excited me. Also writing. I used to
Writing.
write books, and when I was about 12, I remember over the course of a year, I continued to write chapters of this story, and I'd take them to school and read the new chapter to my friends. And I was
Mm.
so excited when I got a typewriter for my 12th birthday, because I desperately wanted one so I could sit there and feel like a real writer, using a typewriter. So
Uh,
that was really important to me as a kid. And now writing and reading is still very important. I've actually got a few books in progress at the moment. So I'm
ah,
enjoying having a bit more time to actually work on them a bit more, which is a lot of fun.
wow. When is that gonna be introduced to the market though? Any timeline you planning for them to
I
release?
think it's likely to be 2023.
It's 2023.
Yeah,
We look
yeah,
forward
I
to
don't
it.
think this
So
year.
if get when you get close to the release of those books, can you let us know so that we can get
Absolutely.
stay connected and enjoy and celebrate that product. Okay.
Sounds good.
And Melissa, um, what I noted that what what you've been sharing, and it seems to me that 15 years ago when you first reading about the works from Dr. Carroll, the mindset and growth mindset, it's changed you a lot since that point in time. So if you compare the Melissa of 15 years ago and the Melissa of 15 years after, before the after that, what are the differences?
I think a big one is around perfectionism. I used to want
Perfectionism.
everything to be, yeah,
Ah.
I used to want everything to be perfect. And, right now I'm about to launch my new website. And 15 years ago, that would probably take me 6 months to develop because I want every single thing to be perfect.
Mm.
Whereas now I try and have that, okay, progress over perfection. So it's more
Mm.
important to do stuff rather than wait
Mm.
for perfection. And how do I experiment?
Mm.
How do I, often I talk to people about sharing stuff on LinkedIn because I think LinkedIn's an incredibly powerful platform. And
Mm.
I find a lot of people are really nervous around sharing stuff. And I used to be too. And I'm
Mm.
like, just treat it as an experiment. Be curious around, oh, that gets a good response, or oh, people are not so interested in that. And that's all okay.
Mm.
Whereas 15 years ago, I probably would have been so nervous about it being perfect. It
Mm.
would have constricted me around what I shared or what I did, and I'd only do things that would probably feel safe and within that comfort zone.
Mm.
Whereas I feel a lot more freer to experiment, to try things, and also a lot more gentle and compassionate on myself if things don't work,
Mm.
because that's okay if they don't work,
Mm.
because it's just a data point. it's
Mm.
not it's not about me being a failure. It's just about, well, we tested that out and it didn't work. And I think the design thinking really helps with that thinking as well,
Mm.
because you're expecting to fail. You're like trying 15 things and you're hoping maybe 5 will work out or even 1 will work out, but you're expecting the majority to fail, and that's what you want to fail fast on
Mm.
what's not going to work. So that's a really big thing for me.
Mm.
And I think that's self-compassion. I think I used to be pretty hard on myself,
Mm.
really, really high standards. And look, I still had some of that. Don't
Mm.
get me wrong. I think I'm still a work in progress on that. But I'm a lot better at being, more compassionate and almost talking to myself as if I'm talking to a friend rather than telling myself off, which is what I would have, done earlier on in my career. So I
Mm.
think they're probably the biggest parts.
Mm. So, and change you in the perfectionism and then on self compassion, right? And how do we know that sometimes we falling back onto the path of like being perfectionist and being self be hard on ourselves, so that you can say, hey Melissa, let's get back together. We are work in progress. Is there any hints or anything that you can every time you head into that direction, then you know that you need to change again. Can you share with us that practice?
Yeah, because that's a great question. Because I think often those behaviours are default and
Mm.
unconscious, and we don't realise what we're doing. And for me, that's why the growth mindset, fixed mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck has been really powerful, because I've got language to identify. So when
Mm.
I do get a fixed mindset thought in, which is all around perfectionism and being, you're the failure and all of that, it's very much fixed mindset.
Mm.
Because I'm thinking about her work and growth mindset and fixed mindset so much, I can very quickly say, oh, that's interesting. That's a fixed mindset thought, Melissa. And even look at, where does it come from? Because it's
Ah.
often, sometimes we have these thoughts that come from when we're like 5 years old or
Mm.
10 years old. They go way, way back. And often, something that a parent or a teacher said, often with really good intention, but can
Mm.
actually have quite, funnel us down into this fixed mindset piece. So for me, being really aware of that, is the first part, because I think you can't change anything until you're aware. But the
Mm.
second thing is you've got to find a different thought to replace it. You
Mm.
can't, it's the way our brain works. If we just try and say, don't think of that thought anymore,
Mm.
it's not going to work.
Mm.
You've got to think, what is a different thought I can use instead of that? So when,
Mm.
you know, often adults think they're not creative. They might say, oh, I'm not creative.
Mm.
You know, what is the different thought that you have in that regard, which could be, you know, every day I'm growing my creativity a bit more,
Uh,
or, you know, but you've got to come up with that different statement, and that's really important to do. You can't just expect it to stop
mm.
that thought. And I often say to people, the way our brain works, it's like when we're putting new connections in our brain, it's a bit like chopping through the jungle with a machete. It's hard work.
Mm.
So it's like when you're learning a new language, you can just feel your brain working because you're putting new connections in your brain.
Mm.
But after a while, it becomes a superhighway. So you don't have to think about it,
Yeah.
and it just goes straight there. And some of those superhighways are fantastic and they make our life simple. Like when I get in my car and drive, I don't have to think through every single action I do.
Yeah.
Most of that is done at the subconscious level. But sometimes when we have some of those default, behaviors or actions, or beliefs that don't serve us, like I'm not creative, that's one of those super highways. We want to, get all broken down, and we want plants to grow over, and we want, that to disappear. But we can only do that by starting a new road and
So,
a different thought.
realizing it, then replace it with another way of thinking, and then eventually we have you to, eradicate the old highway and then rebuild the new highway in our thinking, right? That is.
Absolutely. But it takes time, and it
Mm.
takes, you've got to repeat it again and again and again. It's not like, oh, I've switched that off and now we're on the other one. Our
Mm.
brain doesn't work like that. But if we do continue to be aware and then look at what is the different thought,
Mm.
eventually that becomes the dominant thought,
Mm.
which is, what we're working towards, isn't it? But so much of what drives what we do, we're unaware of, and
Mm.
actually even getting curious. And I think often people can be really judgmental about themselves,
Mm.
and bad me for having a fixed mindset about creativity or whatever it is. And that's not helpful.
Mm.
It's much better to have, what I call compassionate curiosity. Like, oh, that's really interesting. I
Mm.
wonder why I have that.
Mm.
Why is that? And is that really true? I don't think it is. So, and actually just it removes a lot of the negative emotional charge if we
Ah.
can be compassionate and curious when we look at some of the thoughts that go on in our head.
But in the progress of growing and changing, was there any person that behind you, next to you, and support you for, and be a reminder of, anytime that Melissa get into the old highway, the person will say, "Hey, Melissa, let's go together a different way." Was there anybody that you can think of in your life like that?
Absolutely, my husband. And
Ah,
I
wonderful.
think when I first came across the book, I was like, "You've got to read this too." And he
Yay!
likes listening to the audio version, so he did. And we talked about it, and then we thought, and I think this was, probably when about the time we're having kids. We're
Mm.
like, okay, well, this is going to change how we parent.
Mm.
And actually, that was really important, because when you both understand that, and that's why too, within organizations, if you've got a team that all understand what a growth mindset and a fixed mindset is, everyone can help
Mm.
and remind when you do that, because we talk about it in our house. I mean, my kids are 14 and 15 now,
Mm.
and they will challenge me if I say something that's fixed mindset. They will challenge me on it.
Mm.
It is part of our vocabulary. We all understand what it is, and it really helps us to be aware if we're not initially aware ourselves. If I hear my husband say something that is fixed mindset, we can have a conversation, but he does it back to me, and that's really good. And it's so, it helps you realize some of these things that are really subconscious and that you're
Mm,
not aware of.
mm,
So I do think it's a lot easier when you've got people around you that also understand what this is about, and you're all focused on growing together. And I'm
mm,
really lucky of, with my husband. He's also, we've really, I mean, I look at who we are now versus the people we were when we met. We're different people, but because we've both been so focused on growing and developing ourselves.
mm.
So it's nice to have that. I'm very grateful for that.
I'm congratulations on that also. I the reason I asked for it is that I saw a lot of talents people, they're very very talented, but then there's a lot of, because they're grouping into group together, and then inside that group there's a certain highways that is not, like, it's not, um, it's not good, at least in my way of thinking, or in our opinion, it's not helpful for them, and then they need to replace those highways with the new highway that can lead them to grow faster or better. But then because when they're in that group, in, the mentality, the one, the thinkings are similar, so they don't, it's not helpful to break the old way of thinking, and we said okay. And then even if they come into the new group, right, it takes a lot of, energy for the new group to, and the passion also for, and compassion for the new group to, absorb these people in, and then to welcome in and start the change in progress. So it's great if we have people with, with passion, with love, with care next to us, so that they don't feel burned out, they don't feel tired, they don't feel, like, heading their head against the walls when we see the people constantly going back into the old way. So it takes a lot of courage and a lot of caring to take up that path, though. So good.
It is.
Mm,
And you're right, it's so important who you spend your time with.
mm,
And I think, if people are really focused on, trying to improve themselves and become better versions of themselves,
mm,
but they spend their time with people that are not interested in that at all and are trying to, and that can often be quite challenging as
yes.
well. Because, if there's a group and you see one person who's trying to really focus on their own development, you can often get a really negative reaction from everyone else. It's like, no, no, stay back in this comfort zone,
Mm,
stay back. So it is, and that's why I think sometimes, we outgrow people as well too, and we outgrow companies or we outgrow teams because sometimes that doesn't fit with who we are becoming as well
mm,
too. And I think as we go on, we get more clear around our values and what's really important. So even, the companies we choose to work for can change as well too. Like
mm,
I do find, it's really interesting that, the younger generation now, things like sustainability are so important when they're choosing companies to work for.
mm.
Whereas when I was young, that was not, when I was their age, that was not even a thing that anyone thought of. It was, it was not a value that was even really talked about much,
Mm,
and it wasn't important. So I think, as we develop and grow over our life as well too,
mm,
you know all of this changes, but who we spend time with is so important.
mm.
And sometimes it means we've got to make really tough decisions around what that looks like, both in our personal and work life as well.
I think Melissa, thanks for bringing that up. I think the work has changed significantly also, and it changing
Yeah.
to the good side of it. Where people are starting to see the bigger picture and then try to request for more, try to contribute more to to the society, to the community, to society, and to the world in the larger picture. And I think it's a good sign for that. And
Yeah.
I note here everywhere in my book, in writing here is a work in progress, and I really enjoy that one. I think the organization now also a work in progress to make improvement and fit in, and even like what you are doing, creating the environment that enabling people to be the best of themselves, and create the experience that they can enjoy most. So work is no longer just work, right?
No.
So it led me to another curious question, because you've been very successful in the HR space, and then in a very large organization at the global level. So your scopes, your responsibilities, everything is very fulfilling. And then you took a leap of faith to leave the organization and having a very brave decision to start your own company. And what made you take on that challenging but rewarding path, though?
Yeah, and honestly, it was the hardest decision of my career because, I love Heineken. It's a fantastic company. I had a amazing career with, huge opportunities and experiences, and I love the people, and it's very, strongly based on values and sustainability. So it's a fantastic company, and you know, for me, it was a few factors. So one was COVID. We were on the other side of the world from where our family was. And during COVID, New Zealand shut the borders. So even if we wanted to return, we couldn't return. And the risk was with elderly parents, if there were issues, were we going to, not be able to get back in time, which was a bit, it's a different feeling, because normally you felt before COVID, yeah, we're on the other side of the world, but we can get a plane ticket, and it might take a couple of days, but we'd be able to get home. So that was one part of it. And a kind of a sense to come back home. But then the decision, so that was one part, coming to New Zealand, but then it was around, okay, well, do I stay an employee? And I was exploring some options around some really great roles and some great companies. And then it was like, no, I've always had this sense in me that there's a body of work to be created, particularly around growth mindset in organizations, because it's not out there at the moment, and people are trying to figure it out. Everyone's calling up Microsoft and saying, what did you do? But there's not enough out there. There's lots for schools and education, but there's not enough in organizations. So I think there's a gap, and there's a body of work that still needs to be created. And I'm sure other people will be creating that too, but I want to contribute to that. And I thought, if I'm going to live this growth mindset, then I need to back myself and do this. And, that became the decision around thinking, if I'm designing my life and the next 5 years of my life, how do I want to spend my day? And I want to be spending my day building this body of work, being creative, working with really interesting people, and working with lots of different organizations as well too. And that's what really lights me up. And I love teaching, I love facilitation, so I'll be able to build that more into what I do. So it is a leap of faith, and some days I'm like, yeah, this is awesome, and other days I'm like, oh, this is terrifying. And that's also okay, and I think that is part of it, because often I have a model called the learning pit I often talk about. We often think, the learning is fun and exciting, but actually when we're really pushing ourselves, it's also stressful, it's frustrating, it's overwhelming, and we've just got to keep going through that piece to get to the other side. But because if we don't, we stay in our comfort zone. And I don't want to live in a comfort zone. I want to see how far, how much better a version of Melissa I can become. And, that's what I'm trying to do. And look, it's exciting and terrifying. But overall, I feel a deep sense of peace inside me as well, that this is what I'm meant to be doing right now.
Wonderful.
And I feel a deep sense of purpose.
Wonderful. Perfect. I think that before I say my feeling about that, I'm having the last question for you. Okay.
Sure.
So when you make that leap of faith and go and take on and create the great lab work, the great work lab, right? What did your husband and your children say about that?
They're really, really supportive.
Oh.
So My husband's got his own business. He's an architectural designer. He's got a firm, so he's always done his own thing. So for him, he's very, very supportive. That's one thing that I really like about our marriage. We're always really supportive in each other's endeavours. He kind of stepped away from his business to follow me to Amsterdam. And we've always done turnabout and really made sure we support each other. So I've got nothing but support from my family.
Wow.
I think, my kids are teenagers, so they're just, make sure you still earn money. So, and I'm like, okay. But look, they're all really supportive. So I don't have any worries in that regard. I'm very, very lucky.
Melissa, I think that we are all lucky also having you get into this space because you have the desire of helping people, you have the desire and the purpose of growing and bring people to the next level and stay in an organization is great. But then with the growth mindset, you took the leap of faith and start doing your own business and having the impact is outside of the organization, outside of the battery with the Heineken, and then they can get into many other companies, reach out to many other individuals. So that's fantastic, and we congratulate you for that, and we wish the journey will bring you joy, we bring you a deep sense of purpose, we bring you yeah, even all the things that you are dreaming of achieving. So Melissa, congratulations on that. We really admire what you do, and I and the audience would want to send our best regards to you and to your loved ones also. Okay.
Thank you. And look, thank you for doing what you're doing as well. I mean, bringing this positivity, having interesting conversations with interesting people. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. So go you.
Thank you very much. Make your fourth time coming to Vietnam, and this time, let us know, and we will take you around your family around town, and Da Nang is my hometown. Ho Chi Minh is where we stay, where we work. So anywhere you go, you let us know. All right?
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, have a wonderful day.
You
And
too.
thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much too. Bye bye.
Great. Bye bye.